can't even imagine what we went through.
People in Americus and Sumter County has no idea what we went through because they didn't know. They did not know, and no one can talk about that stockade but these girls.
It wasn't that long ago, during the summer of 1963, where right outside of Americus, Georgia, parents were living a horrific nightmare. During this summer, there was a dozen of young African-American girls that just seemed to vanish. Some were as young as 12 years old. These girls weren't runaways, they hadn't been abducted, but they were taken by the police. During this time, Americus was a highly segregated area, and like many other areas in the South, they were going through the civil rights movement. It was during July of this year that 200 students gathered for a very peaceful protest against a movie theater that was segregated and whites only. The theater was Martin Theater, and although they gathered for a very peaceful protest, there was a mob of white youth that also showed up that weren't so peaceful. They first started out with threats, and then they began throwing punches and actually attacking the African-American youth who were there for the peaceful rally. And believe it or not, the cops were there and they just stood by and watched the other children get attacked. They did nothing. Once the chaos got out of hand, that's when the police started to intervene. And as you can imagine, they did not arrest the attackers. They arrested the peaceful protesters. The police separated the boys from the girls. There was no paperwork, there were no formal charges filed, and there were no phone calls made to anyone's parents. The police intentionally loaded the girls into a bus and then drove them off to a remote area that was rarely ever visited. They drove the girls to a concrete stock cave right near Leesburg, Georgia. It was officially called Leesburg Stockade, but in reality, it was just a dungeon. This was a single concrete room, roughly the size of a garage. There was no furniture, no bed, no mattresses, and there was a toilet, but it barely worked and constantly overflowed within this little square footage.
Nobody know where we are. We didn't even know where we were.
So we were pushed in this dirty stockade, old stockade that had been closed down, I assume, for years and years with no facility, no bed, and no water, no commode, no running commode. We slept on the hard, cold cement floor.
When we got there, we were put in a sweat box overnight with a 12-year-old there. Can't understand it. You know, like you go to prison and what they call it when they put you in the hole?
Right.
That's what this was. It drained all the water from our bodies. And when we walked out, the floor was full. There was a puddle of water on the floor.
Only one guard, an older gentleman. We call him Pops. His last name we found out was Mr. Countryman, that wore beat-up overalls. One of the girls was so small that the guard would take her out.
He would take her over in the room with him and feed her. Sandra. Sandra. He would feed Sand and give her a little stuff, and she'd come back and share.
The girls slept on a concrete floor and they drank water from a rusted shower head that happened to drip intermittently. For a total of 45 days, this is where those girls were living. And during this 45 days, their parents were still searching for them with no word from the police at all. They barely gave the girls any food that was edible, and when they did, they intentionally gave them uncooked or almost raw meat. Windows were left open at night so the mosquitoes swarmed in and just spit the girls up. At one point, for their own amusement, one of the guards threw a rattlesnake into the dungeon with the girls just to see them freak out. This wasn't meant to be a punishment or some type of law enforcement. This was psychological warfare. The girls may have been there indefinitely if it wasn't for one person. He happened to be a photographer named Danny Lyon. Danny was working for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. After hearing rumors of where the girls might be, Danny decided to track down the stockade. He found the property and he stuck his camera lens right through the bars of the dungeon. That one photograph changed everything in that town. It showed black girls standing behind these bars, very thin, very sickly looking, staring right back into the lens. It was clear that these girls had been imprisoned. Those images were published in Jet magazine and the Chicago Defender. The story exploded almost overnight. When it did, of course, the local authorities started to panic. Within days, they made plans to quietly release the girls from the dungeon. Now here's the kicker. Once the girls were returned home, you would think, end of story. But it's not. It's much worse. The parents were then handed a bill from the state of Georgia, charging them $2 per day for every day those girls were held. The families were forced to pay for their daughters' own imprisonment. For decades, these girls have been known as the stolen girls. Because this happened in 1963, a lot of these girls are still alive. They've grown up, they've started families, and continue to live their lives. Their testimony is a reminder that history isn't always so ancient, and it happened within a single lifetime. Long after the bars of the Leesburg Stockade were torn down, the damage still lives within these people. It's etched into the memories of the people of this town and also to the girls who are still living and survived it.